Before the first scream, before the first spear broke, before the first Spartan realized the old rules no longer protected him, there was only a sound. Wheels. Not marching feet, not arrows in the air, not the thunder of ordinary cavalry. Wheels. Cutting through dust, dragging blades close to the ground, coming fast enough to make trained men question instincts that had kept them alive their entire lives. Imagine standing in the most feared infantry line in Greece. Your shield is locked against the man beside you. Your spear is steady. Your training tells you that discipline can defeat panic, that the wall must hold, that Sparta does not step back. Then, out of the red dawn, Persian chariots appear. Low, fast, blades flashing near the axles, horses screaming through the dust, a machine built not only to kill men, but to break the confidence of the men who believed they could not be broken. And in that moment, the strongest infantry culture in Greece faced a terrifying question. What happens when courage is trained for one kind of war, but history brings another? This was not just a clash between Sparta and Persia. It was a clash between tradition and innovation, between the shield wall and the moving blade, between men who trusted the old order and an empire that understood something far more dangerous. An army does not need to destroy you all at once. It only needs to make you hesitate. A bronze shield edge trembles in red dawn light, while low Persian chariots, blades flashing near the axle, roll out of the dust toward a Spartan line that has never had to absorb speed like this. What does the strongest infantry line in Greece do when speed, noise, and blades arrive from an angle its traditions never trained for? In the long wars between Greek city-states and the Achaemenid world, armies did not only clash as masses of men, they clashed as competing ideas of order. On one side stood the dense moral geometry of Sparta. On the other stood an empire that knew variety could be as dangerous as strength. Persian warfare was broader than the Greek caricature of archers and soft robes. It could combine cavalry, missile troops, regional contingents, and shock experiments meant to bend the enemy's attention at the exact wrong moment. The old order was the Hoplite war. Men pressed shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, trained to defeat arrows, cavalry probes, and frontal infantry pressure through discipline, depth, and nerve. The new terror was not a monster. It was a tactic. Fast Persian chariots meant to cut gaps, pull eyes away from the front, and teach even disciplined infantry to fear movement at knee height. It looked at first like a single battlefield innovation. It was not. It was the visible edge of a wider system waiting behind it. Behind that moment stood carpenters shaping lightweight frames, smiths grinding blade edges, horse handlers calming teams, and officers studying how speed could do what brute strength could not. Weapons and tactics that change history are rarely born at the front line. They are assembled in workshops, depots, harbours, stables, and command tents, long before the first man dies under them. Greek commanders debated whether to hold, open lanes, throw javelins, or trust the wall of shields to absorb the charge without allowing panic to spread. That choice mattered because older military cultures often confuse familiarity with safety. The known method feels honorable. The unknown method feels temporary, almost beneath respect. That is exactly why it can be so dangerous. When the encounter finally came, the field did not behave according to old expectations. The first impact was not a clean collision. It was a scream of horses, sand in the mouth, split spear shafts, and a line trying to decide whether to brace or break apart in self-preservation. Men at the center could not see the wheels clearly. They heard them. That made the tactic worse. Fear entered through sound first, then through the imagination, and only then through steel. This is the part statistics fail to carry. Armies are not broken only by casualties. They are broken when the body realizes the old reflex no longer matches the threat. The deeper lesson was that no formation remains immortal once an opponent learns to attack the mind that sustains it. The shield wall was not beaten by blades alone.
It was nearly beaten by forced hesitation. That is why the encounter matters. It was never only about one charge, one barrage, one burst of flame, or one afternoon of chaos. It was about the moment a whole military culture was forced to renegotiate the rules that had previously protected its confidence. The strongest armies are often least prepared for this kind of shock. Weak armies expect improvisation. Proud armies expect confirmation. They train for the danger they already understand, then step onto a field where understanding itself is the first casualty. For the men in the ranks, the danger was intimate. One stumble opened a seam, one gap exposed a thigh, one frightened reaction could kill the friend holding the shield edge next to yours. The pressure inside such moments is almost impossible to recover from if command, training and morale do not adapt quickly. Think about what that means at the scale of the human body. Fingers lose grip when wet. Horses feel panic before riders admit it. Smoke steals clear breathing. Mud steals balance. Noise steals command. A weapon or tactic does not need to kill everyone to change history. It only needs to interrupt the chain of small physical actions that discipline depends on. Veterans often survive because they can separate sensation from instruction. They hear terror, but still wait for the order. They see something impossible, but still hold the line one heartbeat longer than a younger man would. Entire civilizations benefit from that heartbeat. When it disappears, old systems discover how narrow their margin truly was. And adaptation is rarely glamorous. It means officers swallowing pride, veterans admitting surprise, logisticians changing priorities, craftsmen reworking tools, and rulers spending money on methods that do not fit the poetry of the old world. History remembers the explosion, the breach, the charge, the fire, the ambush. But the deeper revolution is usually administrative. This is why so many supposedly sudden military revolutions are not sudden at all. They germinate in overlooked places: a harbour warehouse, a forge, a stable yard, a supply ledger, a language interpreter's warning, an engineer taken prisoner and persuaded to serve. The battlefield merely reveals the cumulative effect of decisions that looked mundane while they were being made. In this case, the battlefield itself became a teacher. The decisive change came when disciplined Spartans stopped treating the chariots like cavalry and started treating them like moving openings in a larger Persian attack system. Once that realization arrived, the men who survived were no longer fighting exactly the same war they had entered. The emotional center of such encounters is hesitation. One heartbeat of disbelief. One glance toward a commander. One instinct to fall back, to duck, to step sideways, to stop rowing, to lower a shield, to save a horse, to look for cover where no useful cover exists. Entire military systems can pivot on tiny biological decisions made under impossible noise. Commanders who recognize this early can still rescue a bad day. They shorten the line. They change formation. They alter range. They conserve ammunition. They refuse a proud but suicidal counterattack. They turn chaos into procedure before panic hardens into collapse. Commanders who fail often keep giving orders designed for the previous century while their soldiers die inside the next one. The enemy, meanwhile, is also under strain. No tactic is supernatural. Chariots can overturn. Fire can change direction. Armor grows heavy. Horse archers need resupply. Siege engines require time. Ambushes can fail if discovered too early. Terror campaigns collapse if one city resists successfully enough to puncture the myth. What decides history is not perfection, but which system breaks later. Much of military history is really the history of delayed recognition. The signs are often visible before the catastrophe. Scouts report something unfamiliar. Captured prisoners describe a new device. Merchants mention strange methods in foreign ports. A subordinate officer asks for caution and is treated as timid. By the time the warning becomes undeniable, the army is already committed to ground chosen by assumptions that no longer fit.
This is especially dangerous in states that have grown used to winning. Victory creates habits, and habits create blind corners. A formation that has worked for decades begins to feel like common sense rather than one answer among many. A command culture that once earned its reputation honestly becomes emotionally invested in proving that the old answer must still be enough. What follows, almost every time, is a race between learning and collapse. Can the army reinterpret what it is seeing before morale drains away? Can leaders translate surprise into a revised procedure quickly enough to matter? Can ordinary soldiers trust a new instruction while the old one is still dying inside their muscles? Battles that change eras are often decided inside that race. The near disaster turned when veterans called for lanes, spears angled inward, and the wall learned in real time that discipline sometimes means changing shape before pride allows it. That is why some battles feel larger than their maps. They reveal hidden truths about institutions, technologies, environments, and the thin line between confidence and ritualized blindness. Even the winner pays for these lessons. New methods require maintenance. Shock weapons require supply. Siegecraft requires engineers. Mounted archery requires remounts. Psychological warfare requires credibility. Armor requires metallurgy. Fire at sea requires timing. Ambush warfare requires patient coordination. No military innovation is free. Rulers ignore that cost at their peril. They may fall in love with the dramatic image and neglect the ecosystem beneath it. A cannon without powder discipline is noise. A longbow without training culture is wood. A terror policy without administrative follow-through is bluff. A brilliant ambush without political consolidation becomes a single glorious memory instead of a durable strategic gain. Yet to the men at the point of contact, none of that abstraction exists in the moment. They know only fragments. The smell of scorched rope, the taste of grit, the drag of wet cloth, the ache in the shoulders after holding a shield too high for too long, the sickening awareness that the friend beside them was alive 1 second ago and has gone terribly still in the next. When the dust settled, broken chariot frames and dead horses lay tangled before shields dented by impact, proof that discipline had survived a tactic designed to shatter discipline first. The ground after battle is often the clearest historian. It shows which ideas survived contact and which ones became debris. Afterward come the stories, and stories are their own kind of battlefield. Survivors simplify what happened because memory protects itself through pattern. Politicians simplify it because they need blame or vindication or a moral that can be delivered quickly. Chroniclers simplify it because readers love decisive causes. But real military change is usually layered, and every layer has blood on it. If there is a reason these events remain so memorable, it is because they are moments when history becomes visible to the people trapped inside it. They do not need hindsight to know the day has gone wrong in a new way. They can hear it in the unfamiliar sound. They can feel it
in the useless reflex. They can see it in the faces of officers who are still trying to pretend the plan remains intact. Long after the battle, the memory that remained was not of Persian extravagance, but of a terrible practical insight. Even the best infantry can be made uncertain if movement and noise arrive in the right order. Veterans carry those lessons home in damaged equipment, in altered drills, in calmer eyes when the next threat appears, and sometimes in nightmares no chronicler bothers to record. There is also a moral dimension to these moments. A new tactic does not only widen the empire of the winner, it narrows the room available to older forms of courage. Men still fight bravely, but bravery must now operate inside a revised machine. A heroic instinct that once solved danger can become the very motion that feeds it. Some societies respond with humility and innovation. Others respond with denial, insisting that bad weather, treachery, unlucky timing, or numerical accident alone explain the failure. Those factors matter, but they matter inside a larger reality. The battlefield has revealed a vulnerability, and no amount of pride can unreveal it. That does not make the old warriors foolish. It makes them human. Every generation inherits a battlefield already shaped by previous victories, and every generation is tempted to believe those victories define permanent truth.
The shock comes when another people, living under different pressures, discovers a way around that truth and forces everyone else to pay attention. That is why first encounters matter so much in military history. They are not merely beginnings, they are revelations. One side discovers what it has built, the other discovers what it has failed to imagine. The gap between those discoveries is often measured in blood. A lone Spartan stands beside an overturned chariot at sunset, his shield scratched and dusty, looking not triumphant, but newly aware that the battlefield can invent fear faster than tradition can explain it. In the end, the chariot did not replace the phalanx. It did something more unsettling. It proved that even the hardest military culture in Greece could be shaken by a tactic aimed first at instinct and only then at flesh. The world, after such a confrontation, still contains shields, horses, ships, walls, kings, and marching men. What it no longer contains is innocence about how safe the old answers really were. Ancient chroniclers often simplify these transitions into one glorious moment, one named genius, one machine, one terrible sound. Real change is harsher and more human. It arrives through rumor, repair, training, hunger, fear, weather, and repetition. By the time the wider world understands what happened, the men on the field have already felt it in their bones. They know the truth earlier. The enemy
did not merely bring a different weapon. The enemy brought a different logic of survival. That is why these encounters endure in cultural memory, long after more ordinary victories fade. They expose the exact second when confidence stops being shelter and starts becoming ballast. For soldiers, rulers, and entire peoples, that second can divide one era from the next.